What I'd like to do is I'd like to talk about what is Agenda 21, who's behind it, how did it come about, what's the history behind 21, because it will help you to understand what they're trying to accomplish, how it is being implemented, and some of you are probably familiar with it, how it impacts you, and most importantly, how we're going to stop it. Because it's going to have to be stopped from the local level all the way up to the national level. And we should be so encouraged because our presidential candidates are even talking about it. Well, some of them did. I don't think Romney has really addressed it, but even Newt Gingrich talked about Agenda 21 as a candidate. So our leaders are aware of it. What's imperative is that we ensure that our leaders are aware of it and they're fighting against it and they're not succumbing to it. That's what's the most important thing, and that's why groups like you are so important, because we continue to go in front of our county commissioners like Craig and say, Craig, this is something that you cannot allow to happen. We have to put the pressure on them. So the UN Agenda 21. This is right out of the book. So a lot of the facts that I give you here today are legitimate. I'm not making this up. Let me just read this for you. A comprehensive plan for action to be taken globally, nationally and locally by organizations of the United Nations system. And remember what we're saying here, nationally, locally, and internationally. Governments and major groups in every area in which humans impact the environment. Now, everything is about the environment, sustainability, make it green. You can't even get up out of bed without hearing something about being green. It's all about the agenda. The red communism is now the green agenda. It touches upon oceans, lakes, rivers, seabeds, forests, farmland, mountains, our education. The book will touch upon that in a minute, about the education in our children. Healthcare, nutrition, healthcare. Think about what we're fighting right now in the Supreme Court. Labor, the unions, production and consumption. And it's basically legislation through regulation. What we have to understand is this is not being legislated by our leaders. This is not by our choice. This is being done through a subliminal type of an application. It's called governing by consensus, not through democracy. And I'll touch upon that a little bit more in a moment. Here's the timeline. In 1970, Brzezinski openly proposed a one-world government. Now you think about this. Most people here probably talked about a one-world government, and people thought that was absolutely absurd. It could never happen. People don't believe it. It was one of those conspiracy components. But Brzezinski actually talked about it. In 1974, a hard road to world order. Let me read to you an excerpt from that. Hard road to world order, which advocated in peace by peace transfer of power to international organizations such as, and see if these sound familiar, the IMF, the World Bank, World Food Conference, UN-led Populations Conference, UN-led population, and the UN military. How many of you are familiar with the blue helmets? How many of you remember a brave soldier that refused to take orders from the UN because he declared that I gave my sworn oath to the Constitution of the United States, not to the UN? Do you remember what happened to him? Thrown out of the army. They made a statement, ladies and gentlemen. They made a statement. And now we have the Department of Defense, the director of the Department of Defense several weeks ago saying to Congress, he doesn't believe that he needs congressional approval to go to war. He needs international approval. Okay? This is a sovereignty issue. This is more than the Wars Power Act. They've exceeded the issue of the president being the commander-in-chief. Now they're saying that the UN and the Blue Helmets make determination as to how American military might will be utilized. This is one world order. To achieve the overall objective of forced redistribution of the world's wealth, termination of religion, speech, publishing, and property rights. This is communism. And if you think about the individual components of what I just identified to you, religion, property, they're all under assault. They're under attack today. Our religious liberties are under attack. They have successfully eradicated God from the town square. Our children are not allowed to even utter the word Jesus in church. In Plano, where I live, there is a long-going lawsuit about a child that brought in a candy cane to school. And they told him he could not do it because a candy cane had a religious connotation to it. It was a symbol of a Christian celebration. Liberty Institute took that lawsuit up, and it's still in court. And they went to the Supreme Court, and they're arguing the Supreme Court. And the liberals started to recognize that they were losing the case. So they switched their defense. And their defense was, and this is unbelievable, this is what we fought for, our independence, that children lose their constitutional rights when they enter the classroom. Liberty Institute and a couple of the Supreme Court justices just looked out there with their jaws dropped. And they said, well, what are you saying? Where does this end? Do you believe then that the administration has the right to dictate what church, what pastor will be in an individual church? And the Obama administration said, yes, we believe we have the right to do that. It's hard to believe that this is even happening in the United States. But it's all part of the Agenda 21. Because as I mentioned earlier, Agenda 21 is the Communist Manifesto. So we talk about eminent domain, our property rights being taken away, our foods being destroyed. It's all part of the plan. When they talk about wealth distribution means taking the wealth of the United States, spreading it out around the world, because their objective is sustainability, equalism. They want all of us to be exactly the same, down to the point where Craig made a comment, stack and pack. They want to take away our rights to live out in suburbia, move us into an urban development area, and provide all of us. And when I say all of us, I mean every living being on Earth will have a called shared wall dwelling of no more than 1,000 square feet. You hear what I'm saying? The ability for you to live in a home in suburbia will be eliminated, and you will be forced to move into an urban environment where you can have no more than 1,000 feet. Now, people call me a conspiracy nut, but what that tells me is it gives them the capability to have total control over the population. You might say, well, how could they possibly do that? Because one of the objectives is what? Population control. What is the Obama administration pushing for right now here in Texas? What did our legislature, our elected officials vote to do? Defund Planned Parenthood. That is population control, is it not? That is population control. So you have an administration that's suing the state of Texas and forcing us to continue to support the abortion of baby children. Our vote no longer counts because we have judges, radical judges, that are making the determinations for us. Every one of these items that I've mentioned here, and this was 1974, are moving forward now at breakneck speed. This is not a conspiracy. This is happening today, and this is a threat to us as a nation. And I would submit a threat to the entire free world. If the United States fails, we go into a dark ages like we have never even envisioned in our generation. 1976, UN Conference on Human Settlements. This is the stack and pack that I make reference to, the urban developments, and you're seeing it all over. 1987, Sustainable Development, first defined by the United Nations to depict the proper balance between social equity and the environment and economic development. This is how they touch upon every component of life, everything that addresses what we involved with in our basic life. Social, environmental, and economic. They want control of every facet of our life in society. In 1992, Agenda 21 was unveiled at the Conference on Environment and Development. That is when Bill Clinton signed off on it. It's called a soft law. It's not a treaty. The treaty was never signed off or ratified by the Senate. But through executive order, they made it a soft law. Now, we're hearing executive orders left and right. We're hearing SARS left and right. This is how they're implementing it. Once they made it soft law within the United States, it opened up the pocketbook to where the administration had the ability to fund every agency in the United States, and every major agency in the Washington, D.C. right now touches sustainable development. We are funding Agenda 21 at the local level and at the national level. President Clinton initiates the President's Council on Sustainable Development, translated into 21 for public policy. That was the next step. Please, next slide. The overall focus was the redistribution of wealth in order to obtain the perfect balance between environment, economy, and social equity. Again, all facets of life. Over 150 recommendations covered a wide range of public policies, most important being land use. They understand that if they have control of the land, they control the population. They don't call us citizens. You'll notice they call us inhabitants. There's a big difference, is there not? EPA established a smart growth network of non-government organizations. Now remember, the EPA is a non-elected organization that has more power and yields more power, I'd say, than the TSA and Homeland Security at this point, although they're catching up. To spread the process to promote government control of land. The government needs to control the land. Now we're in a situation where we have prime land that's being controlled by a foreign country. How many of you are aware that when we vote in November for the president, do you know that the votes will not even be counted here in the United States? The data will be submitted to a foreign country. We don't have a company here in the United States counting the votes for the President of the United States. We have no way of determining the paper trail once it leaves. And this is what's so frightening to me. When the military vote, they vote online once, right? Through the internet, boom, it goes off to a foreign country. They have no way to know whether or not how they voted. I own an internet company. I own a technology company. I know how easy it is to bury code into a very simple algorithm where they count votes. It's being done by a foreign country. We have lost the ability and the right for us to have control over our own votes. We argue over voter ID and a picture. We don't even know if our votes counted legitimately and accurately if it's done in a foreign nation, ladies and gentlemen. That is not by mistake. These things that I'm talking about are happening specifically through an agenda. This is not by mistake. ICLEI, International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. That's an oxymoron, is it not? International, local? What does that tell you? That tells you that there's an international organization that's trying to control the local government, down to the local government, down to the city council. Now I get frustrated with our city council, I get frustrated with our city commissioners. But I'll tell you what, I've been involved with this now for a couple of years, and 90% of the time they have no clue what they're doing. It sounds so pretty. Parks and trees, it'll be green, we'll all be happy. They don't understand what the ultimate objective is, what's the underlying consensus of what they're trying to accomplish with this. Next screen, please. How will they accomplish Agenda 21? This has been taking place for decades now. This just did not all of a sudden happen. It's just now to a point, it's to a fruition point right now, to a pivotal point where it's recognizable, and it's like, we've got to make the change. We talk about we have to make the change in November. We've got to make the change on this type of government initiative. Conform school curriculum to raise global citizens. Bill just wrote a book about what took place at the State Board of Education 2 years ago regarding the curriculum that our children will study about the history of the United States. You would be flabbergasted to learn, when you read his book, you'll learn more, what they had to say about American history. All the ilk in the world, all the problems in the world is a result of what? The United States. Because of freedom, capitalism, because of greed. They blame us for it. They took away all the wonderful things about America. They didn't even have the Wright brothers in the history books. I went down and I testified to the State Board of Education about this issue because it was so serious. I was amazed at the number of people that testified with hatred for America. They hated this country, and they wanted the textbooks and the curriculum to present the hatred of what America is all about. I was one of the few people that talked about the beauty of America, the exceptionalism, what this country is all about, what our forefathers fought for, what their dream was. That one of the State Board of Education members jumped over one of those ropes that you see in a theater to shake my hand. Thank you. It's what we needed to hear. We won the battle, but already they're battling to change it. That's why this election, right now, we're voting for the State Board of Education. You've got to get to know who the State Board of Education candidates are, and you've got to vote for the right people. Because the curriculum that they write here in Texas is not just for our students, it's for across the country. Because we have so many students, we're such a powerhouse in the state of Texas in education that the publishing companies will publish the same curriculum around. That's why the battle was so heated here in Texas. So they're taking our children and they're brainwashing them to not think about American sovereignty, the beauty of America. They're making them global citizens. Mathematics is arbitrary and good solutions are arrived at by consensus. What is that saying? That is what? The dumbing down of our children. We've all heard this before. The things that our children are taught in school are irrelevant. They have nothing to do with real life. They graduate, I know. We have people that graduate from college come in for work, they can't even fill out a resume. What are they teaching them in school? They're teaching them nonsense. They're teaching them about how to be gay and feel good about yourself. That's what they're being taught. They're being taught that math really doesn't mean anything. They taught that math is man-made. So it's actually in error. That's why when you've heard 1 and 1 really means 3, that's what they're saying. That's not a joke. They want our children to believe that because they don't want our children to have the fundamental capability to think things through in problems. They want to be able to just dictate to them and make them believe that someone else is the expert and they will go along with the consensus of the experts. Does this make sense? Occupy Wall Street. Exactly. They have no clue. You go to interview them, what are you protesting? I don't know. I'm protesting. That's all they know. I'm here. Paid for, probably by the Obama administration. Establish public transportation systems to oppose automobile. Again, he mentioned high-speed rail. Everyone knows high-speed rail doesn't work. In Plano, we have DART. It's empty, and we're locked in for years with that thing. Why? Because the city council voted because they thought that mass transit is the wonderful green thing to do. It'll save the planet Earth. It doesn't. We do not need high-speed rail. We need our automobiles. They don't want us to have transportation. They do not want us to have mobility. They want to dictate our transportation because they're going to control what? The property and where we live. Systematically indoctrinate society to relinquish personal rights to the government. What's this, everyone? Is this not the international sign of surrendering? No. This is me trying to get on an airplane. You know, now people argue with me all the time, but I am convinced that that is part of a systematic process for us to give up our personal rights. They could have me go through that machine like this or this, but they have me do this. And we have our little children, 3 years old, walking in, being groped by strangers, as we tell our children don't talk to strangers, but then we stand there with our children and allow strangers to touch them in such ways it should be you go to jail for doing that. But we allow the TSA to do that? Divert for just one moment because the senatorial race is so important. David Simpson, a state representative, Longview, I believe, submitted the groping bill. You're all familiar with that here in Texas. It had 100% vote. It was going to pass. Now remember this. It's hearsay, I wasn't there, but this comes from a very good source. The leadership down in Austin realized this thing's going to pass. They did not want this bill to pass, for whatever reason. I am told that Dewhurst made the phone call to Washington, D.C. and said they're getting ready to pass this groping bill in Texas. Washington was made aware of it. The phone calls came back down. Next thing you know, Joe Strauss, the Speaker of the House, drops the gavel and shuts down the session before the vote took place. Then he had the audacity to go to the media and say there weren't enough votes to pass the bill. Now, you don't have to take this from me. You can call David Simpson, and he'll tell you this story. This is what happened. That's our legislature. The TSA bill, the TSA groping that we have to undergo. And for Homeland Security, Janet Napolitano, to say, you lose. Now remember what I'm saying here. Remember the children? You lose your constitutional rights when you're a student? She says that we lose our constitutional rights when we enter an airplane. My father did not get shot down, shot up in World War II in Korea to lose his constitutional rights anywhere in this country. This is a sovereign nation. This is what we're fighting. This room should be packed with people out the door, frightened about what's happening to this country. I would submit to you that when Obama gave that speech and said we need to have a citizen army more powerful, more well-funded, and more armed than the U.S. military to help us implement our social policies, that was as clear as we're about to have the transformation of America. I believe the TSA and Homeland Security is that private police department for the Obama administration. How many of you are aware that the TSA now is going to start doing random road checks on the highways?
They're already doing it.
This is Russia. This is China.
They're already doing them.
They're doing it in Tennessee to the 18-wheelers. Next step, incremental steps.
Private citizens.
That's right. We're allowing it to happen. We're allowing it to happen. You know, I've got a lot of different sources because of this rate. God has blessed me. He's blessed me with the ability to have the honor to speak to individuals like you all. You are the patriots of this era. He's blessed me to have the microphone to speak to you. As a result of that, I have made many, many interesting contacts. And one of the individuals told me that Homeland Security, TSA, is overwhelmed, shocked by the fact that the United States citizens were so willing to accept this groping at the airports that they are ready to implement the next step. The next step will be when we go to public events such as the Dallas Cowboy game. They are going to have the capability, they'll have mobile units, and they'll pull people out individually and ask us questions and then tell us to go inside this mobile unit to go through additional interrogation and more body scanning. We're about to have drones flying over this country. One drone per 10 square miles. They have the ability to zoom in and see the threads on that shirt and listen to what you're saying. This is a surveillance society. And it's not happening by mistake. It's happening because they have an agenda. And it's called Agenda 21. And it's communism. Create government-controlled, affordable, and sustainable housing. Stack and pack. Who owns our mortgages now? The government. Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. The most crooked financial organizations ever. They lose money and we give them more. They own our homes already. Open borders. Why are we not closing down and protecting our borders? Why are we allowing the enemy to come into the United States? We know they're coming across Mexico, and we're talking about foreigners other than Mexicans. We know they're coming in. We know they're establishing sleeper cells. The Islamic movement is establishing sleeper cells in the United States. So much so that Ashwin has the brave stature to say that if Israel attacks Iran, that the sleeper cells are already in place in the United States to implement their aggressive movement. What does that mean? It means they're going to start bombing us here in our own country, and we don't even protect our borders. Well, a country that does not protect its border is no longer a country. You cannot have sovereignty as a nation if you don't protect your borders, and we don't do it. And when we have governors that have the brave backbone to do it, we have a federal government that sues her for doing that. And all she's doing is implementing federal law and regulations the way they're supposed to do it. and they're not. I will tell you what's going to happen, though. I'll predict this, because if you follow the dots, this is where it's going to go. Those 10 dead heads, dead bodies that were decapitated that we read about today, it's going to start happening here in the United States. It's going to be on the border, it's going to start to encroach within. Who do you think they're going to bring in to protect our border, to protect the U.S. citizens? It won't be the military. Supposedly, I need to verify this, but I understand that the United States military, by Constitution, cannot be implemented inside the sovereign country. So who will they bring in to do it? UN troops. We'll have UN troops protecting our borders. It's unacceptable. It's the next step of us losing our sovereignty at breakneck speed. And, of course, remove God from society and redefine the family. The communists recognize that a communist world order could not be implemented as long as the United States was a sovereign nation and had the power. And they understood, as well as we should, that God gave us our rights, not government legislative candidates or elected officials. God gives us the rights. So they understood it was necessary to eliminate God from society if they were going to be able to take over and allow people, or have people allow the government to dictate what our capabilities and our rights and laws are. Next. Recent Agenda 21 initiatives, Obamacare. Insurers must provide birth control and abortion. It's all about birth control. Do you realize that under Agenda 21, their objective is to have no more than 1 billion souls on the entire planet Earth? That's it. That's what they consider to be sustainable. And they can control the various areas of where we will live. And they will spread the wealth around. So they'll bring people into where the necessary resources are. 1 billion people maximum. Global biodiversity assessment, government control of environmental impacts. That's the EPA. We can't even get water right now from Lake Texoma because the pipe goes a few inches deeper into the Oklahoma side. They wouldn't even allow us to go get oil because of the pipeline, Keystone Pipeline. The EPA controls this nation. If we opened up oil and became self-sufficient with our own oil, the economy would turn overnight. You know, I get these mailers from the Republican Party. Should the Republican Party create more jobs? The government does not create jobs. Even the Republican Party thinks that they're going to be able to create the jobs. The private sector creates the jobs. You want to open up and unleash entrepreneurship and the economy in this United States? Give us the oil and quit spending billions of dollars to nations, and I don't say it politically with people that don't like us, to the enemy. We're sending billions of dollars off to the enemy, most of them Islamic states that want to come over here and destroy us. There is no reason why we should not be drilling, getting our own oil here. And here in Texas, natural gas, fracking. Now they're going to go after fracking. Environmental agency will go after fracking. It's a communist organization. It needs to be defunded and done away with. And in all my interviews with the senatorial candidates, I asked each one of them that issue. Where are you on that? They all say they want to do it. And here's a question. You were asked, where are you in the Second Amendment? This is the question I ask about the Second Amendment to the candidates. Do you believe that you have a right to carry a gun because the government gives you the license to, or because the Second Amendment says you have the right to carry a gun? The Second Amendment gives me the right to have and bear arms, not the government. The Constitution tells me I can do that. The Second Amendment. Interesting placement. Free speech, Second Amendment. Don't get me started on free speech because they're getting ready to take that away through the internet. That's a whole different presentation. Government may enter upon the land and put it in compliance. We're seeing that all over the country. They come in and they take your land away. Executive orders creating White House Rural Council, which concentrates on activities aimed at facilitating the transition from rural to urban lifestyles and settlement patterns. This is what this is all about. The Obama, through an executive order, through this rural deal, when we were all asleep on, I think it was Christmas, we were all on Christmas, signed an executive order. And in there, it's just an example, the rural farmers, they have children that are growing up, you know, they drive the tractor, they go across the farm to market road. They have it set up now under this administration to where the children can't work on the farm. The farmer will be arrested if he has his children working on the farm. It's child labor. What does that do? Number one, it starts to alleviate our ability to have our own food substance and support ourselves through food. And number two, it takes away the work ethic from one of the main areas where our good children come from, farms and ranches. They can't even work. More Occupy Wall Street types. Intimidation of U.S. business through non-government organizations, again, EPA, different organizations that come in, the IRS, that come in and shut down businesses. I spend more time doing tax reports than I do selling my business now. That's all I do. More taxes. Every time I turn around, more taxes. More reports. Yes?
Gibson guitar.
The what now?
Gibson guitar.
Yes, Gibson guitar is a perfect thing. They're shutting him down. And that's an EPA and a tax deal. And then smart meters. Let's go. Everyone familiar with smart meters? How many of you have smart meters at your home already? Did you know that they were going to install a smart meter when they did?
They just showed up Saturday.
They just showed up and did it.
Today.
They did. They trespassed. All right. Now, here's the deal. One thing you got to remember, because this is a battle that we have to fight this battle. First of all, do not let Encore or the energy distribution company tell you that there's a federal mandate that you must install a smart meter. There is not. Second of all, the legislation did not give the PUC the ability to force smart meters on us. Two key components. So when they're climbing over your fence, they're trespassing. Theoretically, a trespasser, you have the right to defend your property. Now let's get into smart meters. Surveillance, security, and health. The surveillance component. Now, they sold the smart meters as a way that they were going to have more accurate meter reading. And it was not accurate, and they claim they fixed that. Whether they did or not, I don't know. But here's the kicker. With the smart meter, the system has the capability to determine what electrical device or appliance is running in your home.
And what time of day?
Well, I'm not going to get into the technical components of it, but it's so defined by the electrical usage that they can determine what channel you have on your TV on the electrical wave of the power consumption. On top of that, the major manufacturers such as GE are incorporating routers, chips, in the various devices that will communicate back and forth between the device in your home and the smart meter on your property. Okay? So, theoretically, that was to be to our advantage because we could go in and turn on the dishwasher when we weren't at home. That's fine. But I can do that without the electric company being involved. Okay? Number one. So, personal security. The way the smart meters are structured is each meter at each location communicates to the next meter close by. You're all familiar with wide area network? You know, each computer talks to each other and it goes to a router, wide area. This is a neighborhood area network. So each smart meter communicates to the next meter throughout the neighborhood until it gets to a particular junction point, captures that data, and then sends it to a database. Where's that database? With this is two components. The health issue. It communicates in a wavelength that is classified as a B2 carcinogen, the same category as DDT and leaded gasoline. The wavelength of the radio signal that's pulsed every 15 seconds, that's captured the data, and sending it to another meter, is detrimental to your DNA. It kills life. To the point where people are reporting where plants outside the meter is dying. It kills and obstructs DNA. So there's a health component. The second piece that's important to this is the surveillance capability. They track everything you do in your home. Now, we talked about property rights, intellectual property rights, the rights to your own information. They're capturing this data, and where is it going? Who are they selling it to? That's your information. That's your lifestyle. The issue that I'm concerned about, those of you that have children, let's just say, I can drive down, everyone at home knows what it means to have an encrypted wireless system at home, correct? So somebody can't jump on and see what you're doing on your computer. The way the smart meters are structured, they're not encrypted. So as the data is sent, pulsed every 15 seconds from meter to meter, it's open data. Which means that you can go to a Radio Shack and buy a $50 antenna, hook it up to your laptop, drive down the street, and start capturing all the data that's taking place in your home. How would that benefit the criminal? It's August 5th in Texas. It's 110 degrees outside. And I drive down the neighborhood, and I notice, that house has their temperature set on 85. It's pretty hot. I go by the next day, it's on 85 again. None of the lights were on. Dishwasher hasn't run. I'll bet you anything they're on vacation. What a perfect way to identify who your next target's going to be. You're transmitting your lifestyle pattern out into the street for anyone to have access to. The third component, we talk about national security, the ability to have systems hacked. We've all seen, everyone familiar with Cessnet, what took place? In Iran, I'm sure it was part United States, part Israel, wrote a code, and they infiltrated the centrifuges in the nuclear systems in Iran, caused the centrifuges to spin and rotate at such a degree that it destroyed 25% of the systems. Sussex. So it's a tactical technology war capability. One of the biggest concerns we have in the United States is an EMP, electromagnetic pulse. A system that detonates and destroys all electrical systems instantly. It takes you back to the dark ages. The way our network is structured right now within the power companies, they're autonomous. So if one were to take a hit, theoretically, the other areas would still maintain their power. Under this system, if one system takes a hit, they all take a hit. So the power goes out everywhere. Now, why is this important? First of all, because we are vulnerable right now. We know it's coming. They can put a Subnix type of a virus code into the system and attack all the units, and we'll all be without electricity. The component that I think is most alarming to me, and this is why I think it's part of the Agenda 21 component, is because these smart meters are not just being installed here in the United States, they're being installed throughout the world at breakneck speed. I mean, I'm talking about having billions of these things installed in years. Because the objective, again, the distribution of wealth and resources and the control thereof. The countries that don't have the power will be able to pull the power from where? The United States. For us to give them the power in the United States, they have to take away our ability of usage. And that's what the smart meter does. The utility companies have the ability to control our appliances at home. If they think that you have your temperature set too low on a hot day, they can control it. If they don't want you to run your dishwasher at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, they will be able to stop you from doing it. They have total control. And with this network of smart meters throughout the world, they will be able to have total control of power for every individual on the planet.
Who's making all these smart meters?
GE. Now, it's not a sole source, obviously. And then who makes most of the appliances? GE. Okay? Put it all together. Connect the dots. Connect the dots. For them to be able to, I thought I had this up here. I think it was, yeah, there it is. For them to fix, because it's a Bluetooth type network. To fix it here in the United States, only $4.1 billion to fix the vulnerability of it not being encrypted. They're not going to do that. And if they do it, who are they going to charge? They're going to charge us to do it. Next screen, please. Key components of the Communist Manifesto. How many of you have ever gone out and Googled, don't use Google, how many of you gone out and Binged, Microsoft's search engine, the Communist Manifesto?
I've read it.
You know, if you go out and you study the Communist Manifesto, and then you go out and study the platform of Agenda 21, They almost mirror. Here's the Communist Manifesto. What have we been talking about today? Private property and application of all rents of land to public purpose. Eminent domain. Take away the property, and the profits go to who? The government. A heavy progressive or graduated income tax and the abolition of all rights of inheritance. Who's trying to do that? They call the Democrats. Are they called the rhinos? Take away inheritance. Inheritance is your property, is it not? You have the right. You earned that money. You have the right to give it to whoever you want. But we have Democrats in Washington that want to take away your right. They did successfully at one point. Take away. That's theft of your property. Centralization of credit by means of a national bank with state capital and an exclusive monopoly. What are we talking about here? We're talking about the Fed. The Fed. Our founding fathers were so opposed to the United States implementing a Fed that was not controlled by the citizens that you know what the penalty for that would be? Death. We have a central bank, we have a Fed that's not controlled by the citizens, it's not controlled by the Congress, it's controlled by several independent banks, of which we don't even really know who the members are. The Fed controls us. The IRS controls us. The Fed determines what wealth we will have as a society. Do you understand how this works? When you hear QE1, QE2, do you understand what they're doing? They're destroying your wealth. They're taking away what the value of a dollar bill is to you when they do that. They print 5 more dollar bills. It makes the dollar bill that you have less valuable. It destroys your wealth as an individual, as a nation, and they continue to do it. And the frightening component is each time they do it, who are they borrowing the money from? The communists. History has shown you can defeat a nation by bankrupting them and never fire a shot. And it's happening today. What did we talk about here earlier, Agenda 21? In the book that was written in 74, the International Monetary Fund. Who is funding the IMF? Who is the IMF? We're funding the IMF. And where's the money coming from? We're borrowing it from China. Brezhnev, I believe, was the one that stated, America will lose its rights. They will sell them. And we will sell them the rope that they will hang themselves with. Think about what he said there. China is selling us the rope that we're hanging ourselves with. They're loaning us the money to destroy our currency. So what happens next? Well, what's happening in Europe right now? Greece is done for. Spain is done for. The euro is going to fail. And yet the United States continues to fund those countries that refuse to implement austerity measures. And yet we loan them more money through the IMF that's loaned through the United States. Our leaders are allowing this to happen. The United States dollar will fail. As soon as we pulled the American dollar away from precious metal as our currency backer, the dollar was inevitable going to fail. And it's going to happen. The way to save our economy is to back it through precious metal. Even the Bible, ladies and gentlemen who are in church, the Bible says it. Do not bank on a fiat currency. When the American dollar fails, the UN will step in and they will distribute another fiat currency. And they will dictate what our dollar is worth. And at that point, they got us. Because then they can control this country through wealth, which we will have none of at that point. Next slide. So what can we do? Get to know our local representatives. Know them on a first name basis so that when you call them up, they know what you look like and they return your call. Zoning members, the mayor, the city attorney, and economic development board. Most of you are not familiar with what the Economic Development Board does. They're so rich, it's unbelievable. They They get a percentage of property taxes. It's welfare. Economic development is corporate welfare. They determine what businesses are going to get a special tax break to bring them in and do business. That's called free market. If I've got a good business and you've got a good city with low taxes, I'll move my business there and I'll be successful. I don't need economic development people getting favors by saying, well, we'll cut you a special deal and you won't have to pay the same taxes as your competitor over here on the side of the road. Because we're buds. Or whatever ulterior motive there may be. Economic development needs to be defunded in the state. It's corporate welfare. It does not help the free market. It battles and destroys the free market principles. Understand what proposals are being made for land use in your area. Read your city's development plan. It's out there. Go find out what's happening and study it. And then when you see that they're getting ready to take away somebody's land for some ambiguous reason, go find out what the reason is. Go talk to the landowner and find out. Because you're the next landowner that it's going to happen to. Attend council meetings and work with your city council to refuse federal grants and mandates. I started this presentation off earlier saying that when the executive order was signed off by Clinton, they opened the floodgates of funding to all the various agencies throughout the United States. I get an email once a month on the various grants that are available for sustainable development. We're talking trillions of dollars that they're making available. So they hang this little carrot in front of the city council and say, well, wouldn't it be wonderful to be able to put beautiful little trees and flowers down the median of this one road? We'll give you the money to do that. Sounds great, right? Let's get some of our fair share from the federal government, which is actually our money. And then all of a sudden you find out, well, you know, you're going to have to cut down the amount of traffic that goes on that road. You're going to have to make that a bike lane. How many of you see bike lanes out there? I mean, in Plano, I woke up one morning and there were like 5,000 bike lanes around on 380. This lane could be controlled by a bicyclist. Well, that's great. We're going 60 miles down the road and all of a sudden there's a bicyclist there. Why are we doing that in the first place? Taking away lanes for bicyclists. When it's 110 degrees out in August, I'm not riding my bicycle to work. I get in my car and I drive. But they're forcing this. Why? Because the federal government wants us to have bike lanes, and that's part of the agreement. Do not take money from the federal government. Texas can stand alone. On highways, we send more money to Washington than we get back for our highway funds. We do not need to have Washington play middleman or dictator as to how we build our transportation infrastructure here in Texas. Do not let the cities get federal grants. If you can't pay for it, don't do it. Don't go to Washington. You set yourself up. What else can be done? How many of you sit down and read your children's history book to see what's in it? I bet not many of you did. You, yeah, well, Bill did. I think you'd be flabbergasted. And when you go read that, go to the school system, to the history teacher, say, why are you saying that America's an evil country? That capitalism does not work? Because I'm telling you, it's in there. It is in there. Be vocal on issues of American sovereignty. There's no debate. There's no room to wiggle around on American sovereignty. There's no room to wiggle around on the Second Amendment or the First Amendment. The amendments are there. They're black and white. They're clear. If we had stayed true to the Constitution as it was written as a country, we would not be in the mess that we're in today. The Constitution is what's going to get us out of this mess. And if we do not, this is the question you need to ask of all the candidates. Are you, and look at them in the eye, are you a strict constitutionalist? And if they kind of hem and haw around, oh yeah, sure I am, yeah, get rid of them. If they're not a constitutionalist, stand to their line. You may remember this when I was asked, how will you determine what laws you'll vote for? It's so simple to me. Is it biblical and is it constitutional? And if it doesn't fall within those parameters, we should not have that law on the books. It probably takes away someone's rights. It does something against the Constitution as to what this country stands for. Stop cap and trade, obviously. Stripping the EPA and the Clean Air Act, I mean, we need to get rid of the EPA. U.S. should abandon support of the United Nations and all UN financial institutions. Now, I'd say this is the one issue that I was most frustrated with all the candidates. Because I asked them, do you think the United States should get the UN out of the United States? For two things. Us get out and get the building out. Okay? And each one of them said, well, I think there's reasons that we should work with the UN. I'll tell you why they're working with the UN. The UN's working to take away our sovereignty and our rights as a nation. We have no business. If there's an issue where the United States sovereignty or our safety is at risk as a nation, and we need additional support from other countries, it's called a telephone. We pick up the phone and we call the leader and say, we need to take care of this. We do not need to have a United Nations building full of traitors, full of enemy, and people that have nothing but an agenda to destroy this country, working in our property to destroy us. And it's answered that right. Which scares me because that means they're all politicians. If they have that mindset that, well, we have to work with our other enemies and all that, they're not the right candidate. We don't have time to work with the enemy anymore. We don't have time to work with progressives. We've been working with progressives for the last 40 years, and look where it got us. It's time for us to draw a line in the sand, and now you're going to work with us. Now it's time for you to work with us. And it's up to us to educate them as to why our principles and our ideas are superior. Because every time I get into an argument with a progressive, what do they argue with? Emotion. No facts, emotion. When you give them the facts, they come around. The Republican Party has been very poor at delivering the facts. We've allowed the Democratic Party to control the message through excellently prepared sound bites. And the media is complicit to do it as well. That's how we win. But when we get our elected officials in this time, God, please, we get the right people in office this time. We, as citizens, have to ensure that every single one of them stays true to the principles that they espoused to us when they ran as candidates. Be brave. Battle for our God-given rights. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to win if we battle. Look what happened to Richard Lugar. I think Lugar got beat by what? 2 points. The only difference is we've been silent, politically correct, while the enemy has been vocal and aggressive. It's our turn to be vocal. We can no longer be silence. Silence is not an option at this point, at this juncture in our nation's history. You have got to be vocal. You've got to be proud, emphatic about your beliefs. Because our country, your lifestyle, our children's and grandchildren's lifestyle is depending upon what we do right now at this moment in time, this juncture, right now. Everything is on the line. The communists are inside and infiltrated our country and our leadership because we've been so silent, watching American Idol and being entertained to death. We don't have time to be entertained to death. We need to be in these rooms. You all need to make sure that you bring your friends to these rooms. None of this, will the kids have soccer? They're not going to have soccer fields. They're going to be living in units inside the urban development area. There won't be a suburb for the kids to go play soccer if we don't get this right. And you need to tell them that. This election, you're going to vote, you better. But you also better make sure that you get 3 other people to vote. Because let me tell you, from personal experience, there was a couple that had a wonderful coffee for me, a fundraiser, beautiful home. My wife and I were all excited about it. They never voted. As a candidate, you have the ability to go in and see who votes each day. Not how they voted, but who voted. Well, I knew this was going to come down to votes. I called every single person I knew was a strong supporter. I said, you didn't vote today, you have to go vote. They never voted. Then they went dark the final week. I caught them a couple of weeks later. I said, you never voted. Well, it got busy. We went on vacation. They donated to my campaign. They had people to their home, and they didn't vote. This means nothing if we don't vote. I talk about a voice. The vote is your voice this time. There are people that really believe that we may not have an election this time. That if the Obama administration and the One World Order group, the elites that are in charge right now, think that they're going to lose that election, there will be martial law called for. And they've already put the pieces in place. Economic, social, and racial. The pieces, the three-stool leg is there. If you kick out one leg, it's going to fall. And they will be given the justification to implement martial law and delay indefinitely the election. And if you think they can't do that, think about the NDDA Act, National Defense Act, where now Obama and a couple of key secret people, along with, I think, Eric Holder, have the ability to assassinate an American citizen on American soil if they're deemed, in their opinion, to be a terrorist. Everyone in this room is deemed a terrorist according to Homeland Security. You're a Tea Party. And everyone in this room is white and pro-life. You are terrorists. The NDDA Act gave the administration, Obama, the President of the United States, the right to have you killed inside this country or detained without a lawyer indefinitely with no jury. No court case. Ladies and gentlemen, that is communism. We're having it right now, and that got passed. And our Republican majority in the Senate and the House passed it. They did nothing. We have to get it right this time. We can win, and Dick Lugar proves it. And we're here. And everything is changing. And we're going to change the politics here. And in Texas, if Matt Beebe, who's running against Joe Strauss, who's the Speaker of the House, if he can pull off an upset, the politics in Texas will change in a heartbeat. And then all of those conservative Republicans that we thought we voted for that last election, we will get the majority and we can turn things around. And what we need are constitutionalists that are willing to push back against the federal government and tell them, no, 10th Amendment sovereignty, we're going to do it our way. This is Texas. A state has to do it, and it can't just be Arizona. All the states need to do it. I am honored to have had an opportunity to talk to you all. I really do feel blessed, and thank you very, very much. Please do go out and vote. Good night.